Time now for the Redbird Report podcast with the TV voice of the Cards, Danny Mac, and Cards World Series champion Brad Thompson on 101 ESPN.
It's a Wednesday, and it's time for the Redbird Report, 101 ESPN. We do this every week, couple of times a week. Brad Thompson, Dan McLaughlin with you as we talk everything baseball and Cardinals baseball. And Brad, as always, good to hear your voice. Last night, my man, that was a tough one. That was a kick in the gut for the Cardinals, wasn't it?
Yeah, that does happen every once in a while, right? You feel like you got a game sewed up. You think it's going to happen, and then all of a sudden a rookie hits a hanging changeup off the pole. The other team is celebrating, and you're walking off the field with your head down. So disappointing for sure. And some good things that came out of that ball game, but at the end of it, you ended up losing the game. You're still sitting a half game back of the Brewers, which I think is really good news with a team that isn't even full strength yet. But a tough one last night for sure, man. What was your biggest takeaway from that game last night, Dan?
Nolan Arenado's play at third.
Oh, my gosh. Are you serious? Who does that?
Nobody.
Takes that play, full head of steam, going towards first base. You about took out your pitcher, Verhagen, and Goldie, and then you jump turn and throw a bullet to Tommy Edman at third?
Ridiculous. I'm not going to say who it was, but I was texting with a former player, and this former player played multiple years, Gold Glover, and also a former coached many, many years in the major leagues. He said it's the greatest play I've ever seen a third baseman make. And his point was that not only was his back to third base, the momentum coming there, nobody at first, nobody at second, but also the fact that everything's on the line. So if he throws that high, the game's over. They're going to score a couple of runs, and it's over. It takes guts to make that play. And that's the thing I love about the defense of the Cardinals. And it reminds me of the defense that you had behind you. Roland, Pujols, Edmonds, you had Yachty in front of you, but behind the plate. These were guys that would take chances with the game on the line. And that's what you have to be. You have to be fearless. And we saw that last night, undoubtedly, with Nolan Arenado.
So absolutely. I mean, that was one of the biggest highlights that we will see. And I thought it was funny afterwards when Nolan Arenado was asked about it. He's like, I've had better plays. But, context is everything, right? We've seen some more plays that you might watch and be like, wow, how did he flag that down the line and then throw from a knee? But I think that you laid it out perfectly about what that meant in that moment. Wish we were able to kind of put a bow on it and say, yeah, and that was part of the reason they ended up winning. We know how it ended in that ball game. So that is an absolute huge takeaway. But I got another one for you, and I know that this is one that you would hit on and did hit on during the ball game last night, you and Jim Edmonds. How about Dakota Hudson?
Oh, yeah.
How about this dude? Rolling out there, 7 innings, only 2 hits. A big number that I liked, simply 1 walk, punched out 6, got his ground balls. This is the Dakota Hudson, and Dan, the pace of game is so much different. We talked early in the season about Miles Michaelis and him being a kind of a key to what you're doing. You wanted a year where Adam Wainwright didn't have to put everything on his back and say, hey, we got you. Well, Adam Wainwright's putting everybody on his back again. That's just what he does. I think he's a bit of a pack mule. But Miles Michaelis has done his thing. And now Dakota coming out there, rattling off a couple of really good outings in a row. We saw a change in the second inning, his last game out as he was battling Yu Darvish and the Padres. First inning, 28 pitches. I think it was 14-14 with balls and strikes. He was falling behind. He was working slow. Nothing about it looked good. And then in the next 5 innings against the Padres, I believe he threw 49 pitches and was just trusting his stuff within the zone. That's what we saw last night. This Dakota Hudson right here is a real problem for the rest of the league as he lowers his ERA to 2.76. The Cardinals coming into action yesterday, Dan, they had 3 starters in the top 15 in the National League as far as ERA goes. There's only one other team that had 3 starters in the top 20. That team is the juggernaut Dodgers, and really not the 3 that most would expect, as Walker Buehler has struggled. Kershaw's been on the IL. Tony Gonsolin leads all of baseball with his ERA. Tyler Anderson in that mix as well, and then Julio Urias. But it's pretty good company, and all of a sudden this Cardinal top three looks good.
I love the pace, and I do think it coincides with him having success. The start that he had at Citi Field was just, and sometimes I brought this up on the game last night, Brad. I don't know if a pitcher realizes sometimes he's taking that long. And when you take that long, you're thinking, sometimes you're just not doing. Obviously, your defense is back on its heels. You were a guy that worked quickly. And the other thing I noticed last night, Gallegos. Now, it wasn't quick, but it was a better pace. And they've gotten to him as well to try to pick it up. So we know right now in the back end of the bullpen, you've got Helsley, you've got Gallegos, and you feel very comfortable with them. Genesis Cabrera was awesome in Sunday Night Baseball with 4 innings and picking up the win for St. Louis. But you have to have somebody else step up if Andre Palante is to be in the starting rotation, which for the time being, he's going to get some starts, probably gets a start on Friday against the Reds. So you got to have somebody else step up. Maybe it's Verhagen, maybe it's somebody else, but I guess time will tell. But you rob Peter to pay Paul, so to speak, and that's something the Cardinals have to be a little concerned about, I would assume, moving forward.
So I was just joking around with the guys getting ready for a radio show today. I said, just building segments, and the radio business, trying to build like a 10-minute block of different things to talk about. And just a random thing that was going through my head is the Cardinals now have had more Major League debuts than anybody else in baseball boy, the Cardinals are going to have to order a lot of World Series rings this year because it's been all hands on deck. You got 2 spots in your rotation that are open, as you mentioned, Rob and Peter to pay Paul, but there are other jobs that guys need to fill. So who ends up stepping up in different roles? And look, Drew Verhagen was tasked with it last night. He hung the change up that ended up going off the pole. I think that Verhagen, it is really kind of confusing to me sometimes when I see Verhagen get hit around a little bit, and hit around isn't necessarily what happened.
He's got good stuff, man.
He's got great stuff. And you just wonder how those mistakes continue to happen for him. Because he'll have like a 1-2-3 inning, and then it'll be double homer. It's like, what is going on here with this guy? But somebody else is going to have to be in this mix, and somebody else is going to have to step up. I think I really like what we've seen out of some of the young guys. You and I haven't caught up really since Zach Thompson made his Major League debut. He gave 4 out of the Cardinals bullpen, ended up picking up a save in his Major League debut with the 4 innings. I love what I saw out of him. I thought that his stuff played. And honestly, and this isn't a knock at Matthew Liberatore, but if you're just watching the 2 guys' stuff in a couple of outings this year, I think that you could say that Zach Thompson's stuff is more big league ready right now. What do you think about that?
100% agree, and I think it's partly due to the fact that you have Zach Thompson, who pitched in the SEC, pitched at Kentucky, and he's a college pitcher, so he's more into his body, meaning he's grown into that body. He's a bigger kid now than when he first was brought into the Cardinal system. And I think with Matthew Liberatore, his last start looked like a young kid that is hit and miss at the minor leagues. He's not quite ready. Now, you might get that one start that's, hey, really good. He's got it. He's got a feel for the breaking ball. He's throwing the 93 to 95, occasionally 96, and spotting it. But then you might go out the next time and that curveball is flat and it's just hanging and it says hit me. You got no changeup, so you got nothing to neutralize a right-handed batter. And oh, by the way, my fastball is straight and I can't locate it. That's what happens. That's the difference between minor league pitchers, major league pitchers, as you well know. So I'm with you. I think Thompson is an interesting case in how they're going to use him. I threw this at Ali yesterday. I said, do you think that Genesis Cabrera is what you did the other night? Could that be a precursor to a starter? Meaning if you didn't have Hicks come out and is not starting and Flaherty has a setback of some sort, how would you feel about that? And he's like, 100%. I think that that's something we look at. So they have options. I think they're getting healthier, which is the good part of this. They can, kind of cover the area to get to those guys until they get back healthy. But it is interesting to think about for the now and for the future eventually with some of the guys that we're talking about. Do they start or do they relieve?
Yeah, and I would say this with Genesis Cabrera, that first of all, kudos to Cabrera to be able to be ready to do that, to tell Ollie before the game, say, dude, I got 4 for you. Thinking in the back of his head is like, there ain't no chance I'm going to give 4 innings. No way he's going to ask me for that. And ask for every bit of it. Gets the 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th against the Cubs if the Cardinals win in extra innings. But if in fact that is something that is on the radar, and this guy's started, Hennessy's has started in the minor leagues before, he can do it for you. Boy, that's where Zach Thompson comes in for me again, because I'm going to need somebody flipping that big time breaking ball coming out of the pen that throws, he was out of the bullpen giving you 4 innings, but he was 95 to 97. I wonder what that could look like when he's actually throwing out of the bullpen, because you need somebody from the left side that you can really trust in a spot like that. And maybe Thompson could end up being one of those guys as well.
Let's wrap it up with this. So you got Packy Naughton going tonight. I find how Ollie is utilizing his bullpen. I love it. I love what he's doing. I wish that Gallegos and Helsley could give you more than just the 1 inning last night. I understand it, on the heels of 5 and 4 days at Wrigley, and your guys are taxed. And he even mentioned it after the game yesterday. Look, I'm trying to win now, but I've got to make sure these guys are healthy for a full season, and being healthy is also being sharp. And you have another doubleheader, Brad, coming up next week. So you've got the Pirates with a doubleheader at home. So you're talking about trying to get as creative as you can, and I would assume we're going to see Packy go through one time through the lineup, and then he's out, and then you got to piecemeal it again, man. It's been really touch and go with how you utilize your pitching, but I do think that Ollie has done a really good job with it and has been extremely creative in how he's gone about his business.
Yeah, I do too, and it's not an easy thing, and it's something organizationally. You don't want to be in this spot. You want Flaherty back. And by the way, good news from his first rehab outing: went 3 innings, was very efficient, didn't give up anything. He's set to make his second rehab start on Friday. I was out at the ballpark this morning. Matz was out there throwing, as was Jordan Hicks. I mean, these guys are coming back on the trail, but you would love to not have to piece any of this stuff together. But I will tell you this, from a guy that had bounced around quite a bit in his career, Dan, as you very well know. I mean, you could blindfold me and I'd make it to Memphis. It's one of those things where I look at this and I see nothing but opportunity. I see an opening where somebody can grab a job. And I continue to look at a few different guys. I mentioned Zach Thompson as a guy. I think if Thompson does what he does, it's obvious that he impressed, because it would have been really easy to just send him out and get a fresh arm. They didn't do that. They kept him around because they believed in what they saw. And I see a huge opportunity right here for Johan Oviedo. You want to talk about another guy with ridiculous stuff that sometimes just gets in his own way. You guys were doing the ball game the other day, and look, in total fairness, Oviedo did his job. He went out and gave you 5 innings, only gave up 3 runs, 2 of those in the 5th. Like, gave you a chance to win from a spot starter. That's kind of what you expect. But I think that the ceiling should be a little bit higher for a guy that throws 96, 97, has a slider, has a curveball, has a changeup. He just needs to get out of his own way and quit overthrowing and just trust his stuff within the strike zone, because I see Oviedo being a guy that can eat up innings, and maybe we see him piggybacking a little bit of Packy Naughton today. Or maybe we see him a guy when he proves that he can throw the ball within the strike zone consistently. Maybe his kind of stuff profiles in a game like last night where Drew Verhagen found himself in it, where you think you can go to Oviedo and get some punch outs. I just think that there's a lot of opportunity. I'm looking forward to, Dan, to see who runs with it here in the next couple of weeks as this team gets healthy.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be fun. Hey, buddy, thanks for doing this. As always, it's the Redbird Report, our podcast on 101 ESPN. That's Brad Thompson. I'm Danny Mack. Partner, I'll see you in St. Louis on Friday night at Busch Stadium. Looking forward to it.
Sounds good. Should be a fun series. I'll be with you, and hopefully we'll be talking about some winning baseball.
That's BT. I'm Danny Mack. This is 101 ESPN.
You've been listening to the Redbird Report podcast with the TV voice of the Cards, Danny Mack, and Cards World Series champion Brad Thompson on 101 ESPN.